Warhammer 2 will have free-for-all. That's right, guys. You heard it here first, and you better not say otherwise. No, I'm just kidding. Total War already announced it an hour ago, so it's not anything super new, but it's exciting news because we have been complaining for years, and finally they have listened, and we're gonna get an awesome free-for-all mode for Warhammer 2. I don't think we've had free-for-all since Medieval 2. And that was like 10 years ago. I'm pretty sure, I think that was the last Total War. That's a long time, so good stuff. Anyways, that's not the point of this video. Well, kind of, but this is a developer interview, and I am joined by some fellow Total War YouTubers. We have Indypride from Milk and Cookies, and we have Oakley from Invicta, and of course, we have yours truly. I'm actually at the bottom left. You can see some of me, not all of me. You can see my knee gets into the shot, my bracelet gets into the shot. Leave it to me to ruin a shot for a very important interview. But yeah, we're asking the hard-hitting questions about Warhammer 2. We got questions about single player, campaign, multiplayer, new features. Actually, all the questions are down below. They're timestamped, so if you want to see specific questions, you can kind of skip around the video. But other than that, that's pretty much it. The video quality is not the greatest, but I'm just glad the interview exists because I brought a really fancy camera with a good old mic, but the camera lens was way too zoomed in, and you don't want to see someone's mouth zoomed in oh, Warhammer 2 is gonna be great. That it wouldn't be a great video. So thankfully Oakley had his laptop, which had a webcam on it. Without his equipment, this would not exist. So huge thank you to Oakley. So check out their channels, Indypride, Oakley. I'm sure you've heard of them before, but their channels are linked down below. So this was part of a Warhammer event. It's called Judges or something. It doesn't matter. Here's the interview. Get ready, get excited, enjoy the interview, guys, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Hey guys, this is Oakley, and I'm joined by Indypride from Milk and Cookies Total War.
And Pixelated Apollo.
My name's Andy Hall, I'm the lead writer on Total War Warhammer 2.
I'm Al Bickham, and I'm the Dev Communications Manager on Total War Warhammer 2.
I'm Sam Millen, I'm the lead development manager on Total Warhammer 2.
Cool. And they were nice enough to invite us to this event. You can see some of the gameplay in the background. So we're going to be doing a roundtable, just asking a series of questions, I think just ping-pong between all of us. I guess I'll start and then we'll just pass it on. Sure. So just broadly speaking, the way I'm going to take the questions is Warhammer 1 was your delving into the fantasy genre. You kind of want to establish yourself. Now that you've done that, I think quite successfully, part 2 is going to be a chance to either improve on mechanics or introduce new ones. So when I ask my questions, it's kind of going to be framed that way. Okay. So kind of generally speaking, what would be one of the main things that you think you wanted to improve upon coming out of Warhammer 1? Was there something you didn't quite have time to get to, but you're most proud of that you got to in Warhammer 2?
I mean, one of the big things that we're really pushing with 2 is the vortex and the ritual mechanics. One of the kind of problems that mechanic is specifically trying to solve is the problem of the late game of Total War. So in kind of most of our previous games, when you get quite late in a campaign, you've kind of won. You own half of the map.
Even if you haven't necessarily completed your objectives, you're so big that you can't lose.
No one can really stop you. Even if someone is quite big in size, they're not really going to do any real damage to you to be able to stop you just kind of steamrolling. It's just a case of time of just trudging through and getting to that end. So that's one thing we really wanted to tackle. So the Vortex and the ritual mechanics in Warhammer 2 in the Warhammer 2 Vortex campaign is all about this race that the 4 main races are performing against each other. And I kind of like to think of it as like a wacky races kind of thing. It's all very sabotaging one another, trying to go along this race to perform what that race wants to do to the Vortex. And it means that even late in the campaign, you can still lose if the other races overtake you and complete their victory conditions. So it means there's a lot more tension throughout the whole extent of the campaign. But we were really careful with this to make sure that we don't make it so that is one linear route to victory. We don't want that to be the case. Total War is a sandbox, and making sure it remains a sandbox is really important to us. So if you want to kind of ignore that storyline, ignore that kind of race and just go capturing territory and getting big like you would normally, that's still a totally valid route to go down. So I think that's definitely one of the big things that we wanted to bring and address going into Warhammer 2.
It's how you accrue the ritual currency that you need to cast the rituals to kind of get to those points in the race. How you actually accrue that ritual currency is also kind of very sandboxy, because you can do it through various things, through special buildings, through casting minor rites, through narrative missions, as well as capturing territory as well. So there's lots of different paths to actually tread upon this narrative.
Does it kind of draw on elements from the past Total War games, like where we had Attila, like kind of a big end boss, or Shogun 2 Realm Divide? Once you get too much territory, does it kind of pick and choose and like part of those little mechanics build into this big vortex? Like, have you applied lessons learned from previous endgame scenarios to this one?
Yeah, I mean, we always look back at our previous games and the mechanics there and try and find what worked and what didn't. There is an ending of sorts to the campaign. I don't want to kind of spoil too much of it now, but it is not a Realm Divide kind of thing. It's something different, something new that we wanted to try. So yeah, I kind of don't want to say too much about that right now. I want people to experience that.
But it is a kind of discrete win point that you get to. You know, if you conquer all the challenges that the vortex mechanic and the ritual mechanics lead up to, and you win, that's a distinct kind of end point. And it's, you know, as Sam has hinted at, it's quite a big ending. And that is also something you can lose, and that's a thing that creates tension during the course of the campaign as you're working through the steps you need to get to ultimately control the vortex, whether that's in a kind of positive or negative way according to your race. That's very much the end point you need to get to. So yeah.
There's also 4 narrative strands going on kind of at the same time. Each of the races has their own story behind what's going on. It's not a shared, you know, like the Chaos Invasion. It's each faction has different thing going on that's leading them through these vortex rituals.
It's fair to say we've got some movies that you'll see when you at certain points in the campaign. So we are really kind of again hitting that kind of hard narrative. So
and very race specific as well.
They are.
Like the rituals themselves are race specific. You have to do different stuff, which is all pulled from the lore, you know, and designed around their particular race history and characteristics.
I think going back to your original question, that is one area we wanted to improve upon. Just there's so much lore in the fantasy world of Warhammer, like so much, and we just want to pull as much of that forward into the game while making it not inaccessible to people that don't know that lore already. So I think that's something we're really trying to push forward.
Cool, thanks.
So magic is obviously a new implementation. Total War Warhammer. It played a gigantic role in the first game, and I would assume in the second game it's going to play an even bigger role. The High Elves, Dark Elves, and Lizardmen especially are some of the most magically adept races in all of Warhammer Fantasy. So I was wondering, what is CA doing to improve upon the magic system from the first game and to demonstrate the power of casters like Lord Mazdamundi or Lord Teclis? How are they going to be implemented and differentiate themselves from casters that were in the first game?
Our spell selection's definitely going to mark out Mazdamundi and Teclis, because even in the tabletop they've got kind of special, unique spells to them. Thinking of like Ruination of Cities for Mazdamundi, and Teclis, as you know, can take from different spell laws. I'm not sure we've implemented that exactly like that, but there's definitely going to be a flavour of that. And also, as you probably saw in the spell effects, we're really hitting them hard this time, making them really cool and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're very, very powerful casters. Their skill trees give them a lot of options in terms of the different spells that they can have and the different effects that they can get. For instance, I believe Teclis has access to all of the different lore attributes for all of the laws of the magic spells. So through means like that, we can make them a lot more powerful, but also give players the ability to customize within the skill tree the way that they want that caster to work. So it means that there's lots of routes that you can take someone like Teclis down. In terms of the spell mechanics, it's much the same as Warhammer 1, but we are looking at improving the scaling and the balancing of magic throughout. And obviously army abilities, as you saw before, is one of the new big mechanics there. And like I said, these are like more powerful spells. They are, they're on cooldowns, they're on charges, because they are so powerful in the battles. And the way in which you can get those is really interesting. So, for example, if you are defending at a fortress gate and you've built up a certain garrison chain, you get the ability to spawn an eagle into that fortress gate battle that you're defending to help fight for you. Or you can perform a rite as the High Elves that gives you access to an army ability called Vol's Hammer, which can literally bring a hammer down on a siege wall and smash it open. So that's an interesting new thing, actually, rites. So rites are minor rituals that you can spend currency, and that currency you spend is different between different factions on performing these rites, and they give you large reaching effects. So, for example, there is unlocking of army abilities. The Lizardmen use it as a mechanic for awakening Slar to bring them into the recruitment pool. I think as the Lizardmen, you can use it to spawn a feral beast army to call upon your time of need. So it's a really cool way of us giving the player access to these kind of like emergency cool buttons where it's like, okay, I'm about to fight this battle, I need this thing right now, and if you've got the money to spend, you can get that, and it just really adds to the gameplay.
So recently you guys added some great modding tools for Warhammer 1. Are you guys going to expand Warhammer 2, add any more to that?
I think our plans at the moment are to fully support what we've got there in Warhammer 1 for Warhammer 2. But we're completely looking at what players are doing with those mod tools, and there's some amazing mods out there.
Yeah.
So there's really, really cool
the
stuff.
maps are
Yeah,
unbelievable.
I love the maps.
Yeah.
And yeah, we totally want to keep supporting that, and we're looking at what people are saying, and we do have ideas about ways in which we can improve that. When we put it out, it was definitely here's our first try at it.
Yeah.
Beta.
Yeah, making it very. Our attempt with Terry specifically with the map making was to try and make it much more accessible, so that people, because when we're using that tool internally, we've been using it a very long time, and we understand the quirks of it. It's our own engine, our own tool set. We know how to work with it, but you give it to someone. I mean, if we have someone new start the company, we've got to train them how to use this thing. We give it out to people in the public, without sufficient support. It's a tough thing to use. So we spent a lot of time trying to make that usable, and I hope that's coming out with all the maps we're seeing. So for the release of Warhammer 2, no specific plans, but we're totally open to doing more. And as always, listening to what people say they want to get.
Awesome.
Cool. So back to going from Warhammer 1 to Warhammer 2, improvements or additions. So I guess we've covered generally the campaign is now structured around this new endgame mechanic, and it kind of drives your story. We touched on magic, largely the same fundamentals, but you're adding kind of a new thing superimposed, which deals with the armies and rights. I guess the next thing I wanted to talk about would be lords. I think you guys mentioned briefly that the lords are going to function a little bit differently. How are you tackling lords and heroes differently in this next iteration of the title?
So, well, with the High Elves, for example, they you get different grades of Lord. You get different quality levels of Lord. Now they build up. High Elves build up influence over time. There's certain actions you can perform, which will gain you influence, and that can be spent on courting the more prestigious and powerful lords to your side. So certain lords to start with, you just won't be able to access. You just won't be able to win them to join. Even if they're in the pool, you won't be able to get hold of them unless your influence is high enough. So, and you mentioned with the Slan as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's
awakening
the Slan.
Do you mean generic lords, or do you mean specialized named lord characters like Teclis or
Generic lords.
Okay.
Yeah.
They'll just be
So like a
different
high elf
quality
prince
levels.
you might not have access to at the
Exactly.
beginning, but as you work through the campaign, you'll be able to get one.
But that influence that you're accruing, you can also use that in diplomacy to kind of play factions off against each other. So if you've got two enemies but they're actually allies of one another, and you want those guys to fight so that they would weaken each other, and essentially your two enemies become weaker, you can use your influence to lower their diplomatic relations with one another to the point that they then engage in battle. So, and you can make people like you can make people like each other. There's so much you can do in terms of playing around and pulling the strings of the diplomacy of all of the factions that you are in relations with. And that's strengthened with the High Elf's ability to spy on the territory of anyone that they're trading with. So that's a really cool mechanic where if you manage to get a trade agreement with other people, and again, you may want to strengthen your relationship to get that trade agreement, to then be able to spy on their territory and see everything that's going on. The High Elves are very, manipulative, looking at the world. They don't need the money; they just want to see what's going on.
I think what I really like about it is because the High Elves are often obviously seen as the good guys, and actually they're quite political creatures, and it's the whole intrigue at court thing. In fact, intrigue at court dilemmas is part of it as well. So when you're playing High Elves, you're going to get some interesting kind of very political dilemmas that may win or lose you influence and stuff like that. And like we say, we can then use the influence in other places. So the High Elves aren't just going to be this straight cut kind of empire-like. It's a standard role. They're definitely their own character as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So one thing that I think all three of us really, really enjoy is playing multiplayer. We think that it's a core important component of the Total War series, and we've been playing it for years at this point. What are your thoughts on possibly expanding the multiplayer suite as the Warhammer trilogy moves forward? And do you feel like there's an opportunity to grab more market share by making multiplayer more accessible, more appealing to a wider group, a wider audience, basically? Is there any plans for free-for-all or Avatar Conquest or anything like that?
Yeah, so happy to announce there is free for all in Warhammer 2.
Yes! Feels good!
Yeah, which is super fun. With the asymmetry of the races, it's on another level. It's really great. So we're really happy to get that in. And we've improved upon the existing mechanics of it in terms of how it counts score and determines winner of a free-for-all. We really like multiplayer and want to do more with it. Free-for-all for us is a initial toe in the water of how does it feel, how do people respond to this, what's the reception, and depending on how that goes, I think we'll definitely be looking at wanting to try and do more multiplayer stuff in the future. Like I said, it's a trilogy, and there's completely that idea of evolving the whole game over time.
We always want to do free, co-op and everything. It's just that unfortunately there is a finite resource, and we have to obviously point that in certain directions to make sure we get the best game possible. I think the other point is obviously that with all the races having different start positions for their two legendary lords, so you've got co-op campaign and also head-to-head campaigning as well. So. So in co-op you can play
as the same race, so you can have one player as Tyrion, one player as Teclis, and you are working together on the race to the Vortex and sharing the ritual currency that you accrue. In head-to-head, you are two factions racing against each other, so that one is especially cool.
So in Warhammer 1, siege battles, some people liked the way you did the sieges, some people didn't. Seems like there was a lot of different opinions. Are you guys changing anything the siege battles wise? Any drastically?
I think the direction that we went with siege battles, like you say, it's kind of, some people are very happy with it, and it's kind of accomplishing what we wanted to accomplish with it, which is a more fast-paced, frenetic kind of crazy dash for the walls kind of gameplay, as opposed to the more traditional, slower-paced, strategic kind of encircling the walls kind of thing. And I think we are making some improvements to the new layouts that we're bringing with the sieges. We're adding a bit more street gameplay and pushing that a little bit further. But I think the route that we've gone down is what we want to push to make a really great experience. And when there's no plan to overhaul on that.
We've got
Fortress Gates.
the Fortress Gates.
There is the Fortress Gates as well.
Kind of siege, isn't it?
It's a whole new a whole new siege battle mode, effectively, the Fortress Gates.
Is there like different objectives in that map that make it stand out, compared to
So you can't bring siege equipment to a Fortress Gate battle, so it really is clambering over the walls. It's a really, really difficult siege assault.
But winning that,
Winning finals.
you've got
Yeah,
access
you
to the
break
inner
through,
kingdoms.
yeah.
How did they play
The
differently?
law hasn't
So-
actually been achieved.
Yeah, and so it's interesting how that carries through onto the campaign map, because if you think of Ulthuan as inner circle and outer circle, and you've got this mountain pass, these fortress gates block the inner and outer circle, and you physically cannot get from the inner to the outer if you don't own that fortress gate. So having control of those is actually really important, because then you can get your troops in and out of Ulthuan. Otherwise, you're blocked from being able to get through.
How do they play differently than the sieges that are in Warhammer 1? Is it pretty much the same kind of game type, or is it substantially different, and how so?
It's very similar
To
gameplay,
Siege
but
maps.
with some of the new siege maps offering more inner city fighting.
So does it function on the campaign map more like a structure that you can garrison and upgrade?
It's a
Yes,
settlement.
it's a settlement.
Oh, it's a settlement in of
Yes.
itself. Okay.
Yeah,
But it doesn't generate income, or
it's a settlement
It's
in
straight
all
up
ways
settlement,
that it's a
Gotcha.
a settlement.
It's got
Exactly.
building slots and
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess continuing on with the campaign, so we talked macro level, but micro, when we were looking on the campaign map, there's a lot of little things here and there. One of the things I noticed was these cool rogue armies, or I can't remember the exact term.
Yeah, rogue
Rogue
armies.
armies was one of them that was awesome, so kind of a return to the rebel armies that you can kind of squash, but this is an interesting take on it. As well as the ruined cities, so lots of little things that are kind of neutral that anyone can interact with, plus a lot of the minor factions that we're going to be seeing here on the Vampire Coast. It seems like there's a lot of like stuff
Yeah.
to interact with.
Yeah.
That seems really awesome. But could you
Yeah.
tell us more about those two?
Yeah, sure. So, rogue armies specifically are kind of, as they sound, these kind of rogue mercenary band armies, and they're built up of, they're all sort of searched out of the deep archives of the lore.
Yeah. So there is law precedence for
Yeah.
them and everything, and sometimes
Yeah.
we just wanted a cool little theme and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
But they're really interesting army compositions. So one example is a Beastmaster kind of army with a goblin that commands an army of nothing but beasts, so squigs mixed with boars, mixed with stegodons, and so you're pulling from all the different factions and creating a really interesting thematic battle to fight against. And so these rogue armies come onto the campaign map, and initially they're quite small, and they need to build themselves up before they come out and they go and attack you. So if you can find them early and get rid of them, you're going to save yourself a lot of trouble later on before they build up and come and attack you.
Is it like an emergent faction that can then take over cities, or
Yeah.
do they just? Oh, okay.
Yep, they can take over. So, so they're really cool. Treasure hunting, do you guys want to touch on that?
Yeah, so you've got, ruins all around the world, and we in Warhammer in previous games, if there's ruins, you can settle them. There's an attached cost to that, but we wanted to kind of bring a bit more gameplay to that. So you've got a choice. You can go and settle it, or you can choose to go treasure hunting, which basically is a kind of risk-reward situation. So some bad things might happen to you when you're delving in the depths of ancient ruins, but also you can find magical items down there. You can find great riches. So there's it's a bit of a roll the dice, see what happens.
Okay, so it is actually kind of random. Otherwise, you know, okay,
Yeah.
this one's a trap, that one's a
Exactly.
trap.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You don't know until you
That's
actually
cool.
go in.
Yeah.
So if you feel like you've got the manpower to take a hit if something goes south, then it might be fun to do, and you might get something
Yeah.
good out of it. So
Is that just armies that interact, or can agents kind of go and treasure hunt?
Just
armies, isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you've got encounters at sea as well.
Yeah, I was
haven't
going
you?
to say
So-
encounters at sea. So obviously we've got a large part of the map is sea based and everything, and that's not necessarily means it's empty. You're going to have encounters at sea. Again, some flavourful little kind of dilemmas and events that may with risk reward situations.
So you might have seen the sunken ship just off the coast of Lustria, just as we got to Lustria. I don't know if you noticed that, and it had a little kind of sparkly VFX around it. So that's one example. You might be sailing across the ocean and find a little island, and you're like, oh, there's something going on there, so you can go and have a little adventure.
Yeah.
The
Basically.
whole map's are quite a trove of
Yeah.
of stuff. There's no just boring empty space.
Yeah.
Everything is.
And the thing that's super cool about these kind of new features as well is that they all affect the combined campaign, where if you have Warhammer 1 and Warhammer 2, you have the combined world together. So if you go back and you play a dwarf campaign, suddenly you're dealing with rogue armies, treasure hunting, encounters at sea. You've got the universal territory capture, so the whole world is capturable with different suitability of regions as to whether they're good for you or bad for you. So going back and playing those factions is a whole new
It's
game.
going to feel very fresh, you know. It's not, you know, your Empire campaign between the old world campaign and between the combined campaign is going to feel very different. The world's going to feel,
and even just all
much
the
more
small
vibrant.
things that we're doing, like UI improvements and everything like that, all makes those campaigns just better to go back and play.
But that's only if you own 1 and 2. But
Correct.
if you
Yeah.
just own
Yeah.
1, that's not on the menu right
No,
now.
that's right.
But for an Empire player like me, it's really exciting to go, right, working in Adolf, I'm just going to pop across the sea and try have a go at taking Lustria now.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So similar to game 1, similar to game 1, game 2 is going to have a huge emphasis on dragons, maybe more so than game 1. High Elf Star Dragons are
There's a
the
lot of
are the
dragons.
pinnacle of
Yeah.
monsters in Warhammer
Yeah.
Fantasy. They can take on the mightiest greater demons of
Yeah.
chaos. They're crazy. What has been done in Total War Warhammer 2 to maybe revamp or reimagine dragons, and how are they going to play differently in terms of mechanics, play style, than the zombie dragons and the forest dragons of game 1? And is anything being done about the dragons in game 1? Will they be changed at all?
So, well, they get fire breath. Everything gets fire breath, and we're putting that
Well, I
back
guess it's
into
not fire for all of them, but
Well, yeah,
breath.
okay. Breath,
Poison.
Necrotic
Yeah.
breath if it's
Yeah,
a zombie
yeah,
dragon.
yeah.
But yeah, they're going to have a
Yeah.
nice in-flight breath attack now.
Yeah, which makes them, previously they always, they fly along, but they need to go down to melee to engage.
They're a bit more
So now they
dual
can
role now. Yeah.
fire from the sky. It makes them a lot more harder to deal with.
Is that an active ability that you kind of line up like a
Castable
breath spell,
ability.
or
Yeah.
castable ability? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, activity, yeah, exactly.
So for getting to one world to the other, is there going to be like some naval, like how exactly is that going to work? Is there a way to like blockade other, like trying to get, preventing?
Just traveling across the sea?
Yeah.
Traveling across the sea is transport ship kind of gameplay and auto-resolve with 2 ships coming to contact.
Okay.
Yeah, we've definitely chosen to focus our efforts on land battles and
right.
where Warhammer's strength really is. But that's not to mean that the sea gameplay is devoid. There's, as we mentioned, the encounters at sea. There's storms that roam around on the oceans. They move between turns around randomly to varying strengths, so you've got to watch out for where they're going to be. There's reefs and maelstroms at sea, which are areas that will damage you, you've got to watch out for.
There's also a certain race that's really good in the sea, but I can't say any more about that at the moment.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So it's more about like planning and just like you can set up this huge army, but if you don't plan ahead, then you can lose into disaster.
Yeah.
Worst things happen at sea,
Yeah.
especially in Warhammer.
So in the gameplay we saw, and you guys showed us the Lizardmen, the High Elves. So we played the Lizardmen, so we got to see a bit of the Rampage. That was a cool mechanic, a nice new twist on it. Can we expect something similar for the other new factions, that they'll each have their own kind of different approach to battle like that, or will they be more traditional?
Yeah, each faction plays quite differently in battle. The High Elves they're really all about the defense. They have martial prowess, which is when their health is above 50%. They are much stats balancing to be done. They are much better in charge defense and melee defense. So you got to be really careful with just trying to keep your units high health, forming shield walls, locking them in. You really want to keep those guys defensive.
Did you just confirm?
No, I didn't.
I was gonna check and see if formations, but okay. Fair enough.
Eagle eyes.
That's the High Elves. We're not talking about the other factions right now, but their gameplay is equally as different in battles, and we'll get to that more later.
So you guys released the Lizardmen roster yesterday. Similar to a few of the units that were implemented in Game 1, like the Aspiring Champions, there are a couple that are drawn from the lore, but aren't actually from the army books. So I would love to hear about specifically the Bastiladon with the Revivification Crystal, and what the idea behind that unit was, how closely you worked with Games Workshop on implementing that, and where that whole impetus came from.
Well, that's kind of Alistair, a battle director, a battle designer. That's the director thing. He wanted, he kind of spotted, he wanted something else for the Bastiladon to do. We couldn't quite get the swarming working as yet for the
Ark of Sotek.
The Ark of Sotek. So we wanted to work on something else, so a healing platform. So it's me and Alistair working on it, and then we kind of pitch it to Games Workshop, and we have a very good relationship, as we've said numerous times before, we have a really good relationship with Games Workshop. They're really happy with what we do, and they were like, that's cool, and
It's
so,
fitting.
the revivification crystal.
It's very hard to say.
That. I know, I came up with the name and now I can't say it. I think the key to kind of working in the lore, making something new in the lore, is if you're kind of you know what the lore is and everything. So if we said to Games Workshop we want a blue flying dwarf, they'd probably say no.
Probably not.
As
cool as that would be.
Wow. It's sensitivity. But if we
Sensitive
say
to initial conditions,
actually we want a cool new crystal kind of ability for Bastillodon, they're probably going to say yes.
Can you expand on how it works in combination with the Rampage mechanic?
I can't, to be honest, at the moment.
Or what?
I mean, it will rampage because it's.
Does it just heal units, or how does the unit function?
I believe it's an AoE healing.
Yeah.
Like a
There's an
corpse.
aura.
Passive,
It's an aura.
passive
It's a
AoE
passive aura.
healing aura.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they'll still rampage, but they'll heal when they're fighting. So, yeah.
So, out of all the monsters and creatures in Warhammer, which one is your spirit animal?
Skink!
The one from the trailers. That's you.
We kind of
happiest
lined
game.
up here. We got
Ragnarok.
Ragnarok, Skink, and Slan. So,
I can say it, not sure.
Hard-hitting questions there.
this is
If we're taking all of Warhammer, help it.
How about so far?
Abomination. Okay.
So far,
Confirmed.
Yeah.
That's confirmed. You were asking me a very specific question.
Grimlock specifically, not just any Carnosaur.
It's
Grimlock.
is the
It's
best.
got to be Grimlock. Yeah.
Do you get a Saurus Oldblood riding you then? Is that how it works?
No, just Crocodile. Not any Saurus
Okay,
Oldblood. Come on.
okay, good.
Yeah.
But there's some other high elf mounts that we didn't see. I'm assuming?
High Elf mounts.
Yeah.
For,
Dragons,
you
great
mean for
eagles.
like mages and princes, or
Yeah, for the commanders.
what did we show off? So there was the Great Eagle.
Got any dragon mounts
was
for
there.
the heroes and all?
No, the
I want
wolves.
to say yes.
Oh, we haven't released the roster yet, so I'm not sure how much we can say.
Yeah, I think
Guys.
more info on that coming later. But yeah, lots of stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
So we've covered a lot of
Sardonic.
we've covered a lot of stuff for this initial release, which leads us to maybe DLC. So in the past, it's been kind of shaky, but I think people have appreciated the transparency of the DLC that we've gotten here. Very open and upfront about it, especially the timeline that shows we're here. Expect this DLC in the future. I think people have really appreciated that. The Lord packs and the campaign packs have been pretty great. I hope you guys are going to pursue the same level of transparency. But is there something you've learned that you want to pitch new DLC platforms instead of Lords and campaigns? Maybe do monsters pack or something like that. Are you trying to expand the selection?
I think we've got ideas about things we can try for sure. There's so much stuff that we could put in.
Right.
It's just the list is endless of what we want to do. But for sure, the method of Lord and Hero packs and campaign packs have gone down really well.
That's worked
We're
well.
really happy with what they provide, and
I think particularly it was such a pleasant surprise to see how stoked people were with Regiments of Renown.
yeah,
Because they're
awesome.
cool. They don't just expand your roster, but they give you access to units before you can get them in your building tree. And I just didn't think they were going to go down as well as they did.
They're really
They
cool.
were just,
I
great.
think for me, it's always the Lords and Heroes packs because it's a way of getting all these cool special characters that we may have not got round to on the first pass. So Skarsnik.
Skarsnik's great, yeah.
And
and Wurzel.
I think it's pretty certain we're going to continue.
Yeah,
Doing
there's
at
stuff
least a
we've
few of
learned
those.
from doing them that we take forward, like the multiple start positions for the legendary lords and things like that. It's just that makes sense. Let's keep doing that. People really like that.
Multiple starts is always something we wanted to do from Warhammer 1. Again, it was you have a finite amount of man hours.
Yeah.
You have to focus it.
And on the
We're
point of
learning.
And on the point of transparency, yeah, we'll absolutely be talking about that in good time. I mean, we're still kind of early days, but yeah, in good time we will start talking in at least general terms about the roadmap a bit.
Sure.
So.
Obviously, you guys can't confirm anything on this front, but I still want to ask, have you thought at all about doing historical campaigns or historical settings, something like the Sundering or the War of the Beard? Anything like that? Has that crossed the...
I think we talk about that sort of thing all the time.
All the time.
don't we? It's like, there's so much you can do with this world. I mean, we've got our work cut out, to be honest, just building
The trilogy.
yeah. And you know, who knows what we can do later.
Once
Like,
the big
sky's the limit.
map's complete, maybe that's something we can
yeah.
come and think about again.
Cool. I think we've covered the breadth of it. Do you have a last question?
Let me try to think of something. Just to end it on a light note.
I have...
You got something?
It's been asked a few times since the games come out, since the first game came out. Where's Krell?
Well, doesn't Kemmler ask that all the time?
I think he does, yeah.
Where is Quail?
Where is
That is a
Krell?
question.
It's an interesting...
Is that your theory for old friend?
I think he's on holiday. I think he's on
I
holiday.
don't think he's been dug up yet.
Oh, okay.
Maybe.
Well, I guess we've got
Where
to
is
find it,
Krell?
haven't we?
Where's Krell?
Where's Krell?
I would
Great
love to know.
question.
I
It's
missed the
very
guy.
existential.
I missed the
It's an
guy.
existential question.
Thank you very much for the time and
Thank you,
really
guys.
appreciate
Okay.
it.
Are there any parting things you guys are dying to let us know?
And closing
Oh.
statement.
Anything you
Died
might
to let you know.
Yeah.
loads of
Yeah.
it.
Is there anything we missed that you guys want to tell us?
To wrap my brain.
We've covered quite a lot, haven't we?
We didn't talk about geomantic web. That
No.
might be worth touching
Yeah.
on. So geomantic web is one of the main factional features for Lisman. So I'll go to the lore expert first for an explanation of the
We've got
geomantic
milk and
web.
cookies here. The geomantic web, so it's basically a lattice of power that the Slan effectively sit in their star chambers at the top of the ziggurats and talk to each other by. As we enter the Vortex campaign, it's kind of fallen into disrepair due to there's something spoilery that's happened to the Vortex. And so part of your campaign gameplay is building up and aligning the geomantic web. So the more kind of temple cities you own, the more you can build that
them up
power,
and build that
connect them
Yeah.
up like a big kind of line diagram.
So you want to build up your cities where two ley lines connect, and if the power between them is based upon the lowest level, so if you have a level 3 and a level 2, that's a level 2 power, and that means that the commandments being issued in both of those settlements will perform at a level 2 rank. So you want to try and get your cities to a higher level, connect the ones that connect and get them higher so you can perform more powerful commandments. So there's lots of interesting
Tying it
gameplay
to
and
the
trying to work
commandment
out, okay,
system is
I've got
really
this city,
strategy,
so
yeah.
therefore I want to connect with this one, so I've got to go and get that one, and then build them up, and fighting against the Lizardmen player, you want to take out his connections to power him down, so yeah.
It's a totally different way of kind of playing, and again, it's using that kind of asymmetric.
And it gives you
design.
a sort of unusual expansionary choice to make as well, because there's all these ruins. You can rebuild temple cities in those ruins, but this one over here might look like an easy one to grab because it's in a safe point, but are you going to be able to? You've got a big, powerful geomantic web going on over here. Is there kind of any point should you be getting a close one, even though it's harder to get, so you can link it up with the web and instantly, build it up and get access to those high commandments. So it gives you some interesting choices to make about where you're going. So.
Yeah.
How does it work in? I can't believe I'm asking you this. How does it work in co-op with the geomantic web if you've got two Lizardmen players? That's a good question.
That's a good
That is a very good question.
How does that work?
This is concerning,
We'll come
guys.
sit over here.
I think each player.
Do you have your own web?
I'll
or
go check.
Get back to you on that one.
Yeah, back to you on that
Sounds
one.
good.
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for the time.
Thank
Really
you very much.
appreciate it.
Cheers, guys.
You're welcome.